For years, Human Rights Watch has documented hazardous child labor in tobacco farming in countries around the world. I've interviewed hundreds of child workers involved in backbreaking, dangerous work on tobacco farms. In the United States in 2013, in the state of North Carolina, I met Miguel, a 12-year-old boy who was working on a tobacco farm wearing a black plastic garbage bag as his protective equipment. He told me he got intense headaches while he worked in the field. He said it felt like there was something in his head trying to eat it. A few years later, in 2015, I met Ayu, a 13-year-old girl in Indonesia who worked on her family's small farm in West Java. She told me she vomits every year while helping her family harvest tobacco. A few years later, in 2017, in Zimbabwe, I met Ed Meyer, a small tobacco farmer who had been growing tobacco for years and supplying it to a large multinational tobacco company. Ed Meyer, his wife, and his teenage children all worked on the family's farm and all had vomited or felt dizzy while working in tobacco. The symptoms that these children and their family members described from different countries around the world are all consistent with acute nicotine poisoning. And I'm sure other experts today have spoken about the hazards to children of exposure to nicotine from handling tobacco leaves. We know the most common symptoms are nausea, vomiting, headaches, and dizziness, which are just the symptoms that we've heard over and over from the child workers that we've interviewed in different parts of the world. The tobacco that they're tending and harvesting is being bought by some of the largest tobacco companies in the world. And these companies have a human rights responsibility to ensure that they're not profiting from hazardous child labor. Admire, the farmer I interviewed in Zimbabwe, told me he dreamed of making enough money so that he could hire workers and his children wouldn't have to work in the fields with him. Imagining what that life could be like, he said, they'd go to school without pain in their bodies. At night, they'd sleep. They'd have enough time to read books. This was the future he wanted for his children, and this is what we at Human Rights Watch are working for. Tobacco companies have responsibilities to end child labor in their supply chains, and we are committed to working with all of you, with governments to hold them accountable to ensure that they're not profiting from child labor in their supply chains. Thank you for your time.